And we're back. Take two. Apologies. It seems that we had a split of feed. You know, we love Mighty Mo, so thank you. And apologies for that. Even though it was turned off, I don't know what happened. And so now we're back with take two of the International Comics Crusaders. So we're back. We're live. Chris, everything's back in good shape. It is just sending to our one channel as it should be. So again, apologies for that error. And Mel, if you don't mind, go ahead and delete that from your feed. Apologies, brother. Totally unintentional. All right, so we were continuing, obviously, on our horror theme, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I just gave you a little breakdown of, like, you know, Chris had asked me about, like, my first sort of horror comics. I mean, those, I mean, obviously, like, I think we've talked a little bit on previous shows about, you know, what Marvel was doing in the 70s, which, you know, and Warren. So, you know, those are kind of my first, like, there's the British comics, and it was, most of them, it's funny, it's the ones that made the biggest impression on me were all the black and white comics, with British Weekly, Warren, the Marvel black and white line.
I think what really got me in my mid-teens were the Bill Shane's on the Pacific comic books. The Twisted Tales.
Yeah.
That was great stuff.
That was before I got into the EC comics, because I had only heard about EC comics, and it was really hard to get by before they started the reprints, the color reprints in the mid-'80s. That was around the same time, but that was a little bit later. But when Twisted Tales #1 came out, that was the stuff for me. I really got into that series. It was only, I believe, 10 issues, 10 issues, and fantastic stuff. I really love those. They're really, for me, I got very great stories.
Yeah, I think for me, I got into those purely because of Richard Corbin, because I was already familiar with Richard Corbin through Eerie and Creepy and Heavy Metal. So it just seemed natural to sort of like, oh, more Corbin. Oh, great. Okay, wow. You got Corbin.
Definitely. So, but when I was like 14, Corbin was still an acquired taste for me. He was a little bit too much. I knew the heavy metal stuff, but he was a little bit too much for me. But that very slick, refined American style of comic books, Bruce Jones writing, that was fantastic. There's some really cool stories in those 8, 9, 10 issues.
I mean, I know this is a bit of sort of a detour, but and I'll keep it short. Are any of those in print? Like, are there any trades of
as far as I know?
Which title specific?
Well, any of them. I mean, like those Bruce Jones short stories.
I think as far as I know, a few stories were reprinted in anthology books, but overall the whole output is sort of in limbo because of the divorce going on between April Campbell and Bruce Jones. Somewhere the rights got lost in that, which is a bit unfortunate. So they have never been reprinted in full, which would be amazing. Can you think of an omnibus of all these old Pacific stories? That would be excellent.
Yeah,
very advanced printing. I mean, Bill talked about this, and high gloss paper. It was a very nice deal, and they had very good artists on there. Al Williamson and Brent Anderson.
Yeah, Dave Stevens.
Young Dave Stevens.
Yeah, Bill Stout.
I just can't get over, man.
John Bolton did a few of my favorite stories in those.
Yeah, man. Bill was gangster. I never realized how gangster he was in the industry and what he pulled and the talent that he pulled, you know, for his venture. I mean, it's just he wowed me, man. Great guy.
Yeah, but it was also, especially Bruce Jones, because that was a package deal. That was a package book Campbell and Jones did for Bill, and Jones had been working with all these artists during the his Warren time. Because if you go to the Warren books, Creepy and Eerie, there's a very strong start when Archie Goodwin was the editor, when Goodwin was also writing, and then we see a very, very steep decline. And that's then around the 50s, 60s numbers. This is when the new guys come in. It's not only the Spanish guys, but you see the first book of Bernie Wrightson. This is when also Bruce Jones comes in as a writer. and you really see how good this stuff goes. And these cooperations between Wrightson and Bruce Jones, excellent stuff.
Mm. Yeah.
Things that we won't get again.
Yeah, I think Warren definitely the Moran magazines definitely benefited from someone like Archie Goodwin, who, you know, he brought in, I'm pretty sure he was responsible for bringing a lot of the talent that kind of
initially, yes.
And it was a great mix of not only the new and upcoming, but it was you'd have the old established talent as well. And
yeah, but it's also interesting.
Alex Toth, you know.
Yep. But it's also interesting when you see this. Goodwin brought in very much the Gothic flavor, and he brought in these EC guys from the 50s, and a lot of that stuff is very Gothic. And when Archie left, because Warren got into financial troubles, and you had new writers coming in, the baby boom writers, and Bill DeWay and other guys, they brought in more the urban horror. And that was quite a change. And what Bruce Jones did, he could do both. He could do the Gothic Lovecraftian horror story where a guy would go to a town in Africa and come back changed, or he would do the very, very, very modern story. One of my favorite Bruce Jones stories, we mentioned Richard Corbin, is the story where you have this couple out on the high seas and they get attacked by sharks. Do you know that story?
Oh, vaguely remember.
Amazing. That is amazing. That is fantastic. There's a fantastic, very highly tense story somewhere in creepy 1775 or something. It's some of Corbin's best art. You have this young attractive couple. They're out on the high seas on a small yacht. They get attacked by sharks. That's the story. It's amazing.
Too funny. That was great stuff. Because my first taste in the horror, you know, was the Marvel comic books, you know, Chambers of Chills and stuff like that, Journey into Mystery, things we were talking about. So that's my early dive. So that's kind of what I miss, you know, seeing what's now out, you know, those long form stories, 6-issue miniseries. Back then, man, you could pick up that one issue of Chamber of Chills, you get 3-4 stories.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean, and they were one and done stories, and you know, you got your money's worth. You know, it's just great, and they were cool shit that you could see yourself watching on a Twilight Zone, or you know what was it, Tales from the Dark Side, you know, all that good stuff.
Well, I think you also, I remember there was a series of black and white reprints of a lot of American comic books of all the sort of horror and science fiction and creepy-esque stories that were in.
I forget you guys had to get collected editions.
Yeah, but they were great. They came out.
I'm sure. Not knocking you guys. We had the OGs. You had to get
yeah, but they were all in black and white still. So I only ever saw them in black and white, and so I was familiar in that format. And yeah, they were. I mean, but it was great, and you had no idea. As a kid, when I first saw them, there was never a thought of, oh, I wonder where the artists are. I wonder where these are written. It wasn't. You just enjoyed the stories.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's my whole take on it, because I wasn't really seeing who created what. I mean, the art was awesome. The story was dope, but I never looked at the names. I was just so intrigued into what the story was. You know, I always love those type of stories where a thief would bump into somebody's house, do some dumb shit, and next thing you know, they're getting killed because it's out of. Instead of trying to keep it easy, they keep doing dumb stuff.
Yeah.
I think the strange thing was that when I go when I go back to my earlier memories, and this is also where my question came from. What book did scare you as a child? I mean, for me, that was Tomb of Dracula. Was Gene Colan. I mean, I couldn't look at that book. And the interesting thing is, me and my friends, we knew the Marvel artists, but we didn't know the DC artists. The DC artists, everything looks the same. But with the Marvel artists, you had the Kirby, you had Ditko, you had Colan. Very unique voices, very unique artistic voices. And Colan also did Daredevil, and I really like Daredevil, but I didn't like his work on Dracula, and he was also very, very good on that short run with Roy Thomas before that Doctor Strange run, because it got really, really creepy in the end when you had Eternity there, when he wore the mask, when he looked very creepy. And I know they did it to make him more look like a superhero, but to me, with the mask, he looked much more creepy, and especially the way Colan drew him. And that was very interesting. And you had this Sons of Satanish storyline and the devil worship stuff and like that. That was very interesting for me. And it was also very, oh no, I don't want to touch this. When I was 6 or 7, that looks very creepy. It was very interesting.
Well, Gene Colan managed to take over. Like he wasn't one of those artists that where like if you know a previous favorite artist was drawing that book, and then Gene came on, you didn't go like, oh, I hope that guy comes back sooner. It would be when you think that Gene Colan took over Doctor Strange and made that his own. I mean, it was it didn't, you know, it didn't sort of erase what Steve Ditko had done, but he made it his own. It was like, wow, he did some fantastic stuff. Daredevil.
I mean, Daredevil was really suffering from John Romita, because John Romita was very, very, he fit perfectly to Spider-Man. But I find his work on Daredevil incredibly boring. Yeah. And Gene Colan really changed the look of that book.
It was so dynamic. I mean, his artwork is, and even his fairly short run on Captain America.
Yeah, but it was also a very different kind of city, because it was all this very 50-ish New York. You had this John Romita, and you had the Kingpin, also the Spider-Man. It looked all very 50-ish. And with Gene Colan, it all looked cutting edge. It looked very late 60s, looked stylish, looked modern, but it also looked very dangerous, and that was very interesting. And I think there you have a very interesting mix between the horror elements you had in Dracula and you had on Doctor Strange, but you also brought a little bit of that to Daredevil. It was a very good combination.
See, I love Silent. I mean, look at this. And that Beautiful Man versus Werewolf by Night, right? I mean, and of course, come on, man. Look what legendary character got introduced, you know?
Yes, Blade.
In that series, you know? But there was also another great magazine, too, because, you know, you want to talk about horror characters. Marvel was, you know, also, you know, playing it up, because you got, you know, Lilith that appeared, too, in this Haunted Horror magazine. You know? And, of course, Dracula again featured, because he was murdering it in the early 70s in the comic books.
Yeah.
Murdering it.
Yeah, that's so interesting times. I mean, and you also had a strong horror renaissance in DC. I mean, Dick Giordano was running was the editor. Joe Orlando became the editor on House of Mystery and House of Secrets. That was also interesting. Yeah. And that is the anthology books I was talking about. You got 5 stories in one of those issues. And they had a lot of interesting European artists near the end, guys from the Philippines later on. That was very stylish art also, very interesting art, very unusual art compared to this. Exactly. Very
the House of Secrets. See, that's a legendary run. Because, you know, one particular book there actually introduced, you know, a very iconic character. You know, within that, you know, it's this particular book right here, which is, I wish I had it. But if you see who's in the background there.
Yeah, that's the Swamp Thing issue.
Yeah. Or, you know, in that run of House of Secrets, again, because Swamp Thing is a horror-based character, biological horror. So this is why, you know, I love how when Moore and everybody else touched them. You know,
well, it was nice when they
step them outside of that, though. It's kind of a little weird to me.
Yeah, it was nice when they kind of tied that story into Swamp Thing mythology later on.
Yeah. What's also interesting is when you think about that, at the same time Marvel introduced Man-Thing in the first issue of Savage Tales.
Oh yeah.
If you go back to the first Man-Thing story, the Graham Morrow art is gorgeous. I mean, black and white Graham Morrow art is gorgeous, but the story is nothing like Swamp Thing. It's both a story about a scientist who gets turned into a swamp creature.
Oh, I'm so upset with myself.
Are so different. It's incredible.
Wasn't it you, Chris? Or I think you told me you said the story about the fact that, you know, the creator of Swamp Thing and the creator of Man Thing were basically roommates.
I think they were not both roommates, but
well, they knew each other really
one
well.
of the guys in this shared flat was friends with the other guy who created it. There was very close connections, and the guys were talking. I mean, they were all, of course, all influenced by the Heap, which goes back to the 1940s, which is also a swamp creature, but which is the sort of the origin of all this. But the stories and what they later did with this and is quite interesting. And
I'm upset, man. I passed that book like for $5 a few years ago.
Amazing,
I just keep looking
amazing
at the
book.
cover. That's the first Man Thing, and I effed up. Jeez, man.
Yeah, it's got very interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, there was that issue of Astonishing Tales that had the split story that was it Greg Morrow and Neil Adams? Yeah.
No, it was. I think it was Neil Adams. Neil Adams was retelling the origin. It sort of works as a bridging piece between the Savage Tales story, and then in Monsters Unleashed #5, they continued that story, and the comic story in between is an extended flashback, works as a bridging piece. Because they retell the origin, Neil Adams retells the origin, but he also expands a little bit on the origin, takes that in a little different direction, and then we go back to this girl who got injured in the first issue.
But was the rest of the story? I remember like there was some pages before that, pages afterwards. Was that by John Buscema or was it Gray Morrow?
The comic, you mean? Or
was it an issue of Astonishing? Because Neil
I believe the astonishing issue is Salvage Chema. I want to say something like that. I can look it up, but I can look it up.
Neil did the origin part. It's kind of they did it flashback.
Exactly, it's sort of in the middle. I think
I'm pretty sure it was either John Buscema or Gray Morrow. Kind of, I just remember the Neil Adams part very vividly. Because it was done in a completely different style, texture. It was muted colors. It's like yellow, just like literally like gray and yellow.
It's Astonishing Tales #12.
This is great stuff. I was looking at this cover that guys talking about Man Thing. Frank Brunner. Look at that.
Yeah, Frank was great. I mean, I'm talking like he's dead, but
I mean, and someone mentioned Frankenstein. Look at this gorgeous cover.
See, to me. I think, like, you talk about like Tomb of Dracula having this amazing long life, like Gene Colan drawing this whole run, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. And
to me, Frankenstein suffered because it needed someone like Mike Ploog to
definitely
stay on it. If he'd stayed on it, but it didn't. We suddenly went through. I mean, the John Buscema issues were fantastic as well, but again, it kept dipping in and out and was different styles, different takes.
You were right. It was John Buscema.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, I think the problem with the Monster of Frankenstein storyline is that they moved the story forward 100 years. When the book opens, we are in the late 19th century already. And then they moved the story once again to modern times. And Ploog was out. Ploog was very much against this modernization of the creature. He thought the creature needed to be in the 18th, 19th century at best, but don't bring him. He said, well, basically, I can't see the Frankenstein monster team up with Spider-Man. And that was exactly what they did.
Oh, yeah.
They moved him into modern times.
Well, they wanted him to team up with Dracula, and
exactly.
They wanted the monster team.
Exactly.
The monster team.
Well, I would have.
The book really suffered from that.
To be honest, I would have.
Doug Lynch is a great game.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, I would have left the book. I would have said, like, keep Frankenstein, the title, the book, in that part in the past. Have Mike Ploog carry on with that storyline. Keep going with it, but then have Frankenstein monster show up in Tomb of Dracula, so that everyone would go like, "Oh, where's he been all this time?"
Yeah,
but you could still carry on. It'd be like, will we ever know? Will we ever know how he turned up?
They try to carry it on, like you said, and make a super team via this way right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is a foolish issue, a foolish cover, because they don't team up.
Thing too. Like
they don't team up at all. They don't team up at all. But I think it's quite interesting when you look at the first issue what Gary Friedrich was doing, because he was doing something very interesting with the narrative, because he was expanding the narrative in a way that because what you have in the original book is you get the letters from the sea captain who is out in the Arctic. He meets Frankenstein, who's nearly dying. Frankenstein tells him his story, and the monster told his story to Frankenstein. So you have these three perspectives. What Friedrich was doing, he was expanding those perspectives, and you get the monster telling his own tale to the great grandson of Walden when he gets out of the ice in the late 19th century. So this is very interesting. There's very interesting stuff going on in the first couple of issues. And then you have the idea, I think it came from Roy Thomas, even though he said, well, I didn't care, to move the monster ahead in time again. And that was around issue 12. This is when Gary Friedrich leaves, because he says, well, basically, I have no interest in this. Mike Brooke is off the book anyway. John Schimmer was doing some artwork, but not his best artwork. And then you got Doug Mensch coming on. Doug Mensch is a great writer, fantastic stuff, but he's not very good. He's not very suitable for that book. He's also parallelly writing the Monsters Unleashed stories of Frankenstein, and they're also not very good. He works with Will Merrick on both. The art is interesting. Will Merrick does a very interesting job on those, but Doug Mensch's writing is not very good. And that's about it. And that's what's so interesting. What is so interesting? I talked about this on the other podcast, but I can not recommend this highly enough. At the same time, if you look at what Steve Gerber was doing with Tales of the Zombie, he took this. Roy Thomas took this very uninspired character Stan Lee had created in the 50s. This one-off zombie story, and he said, well, basically, here's a new character. We use him in a new magazine. We call it Tales of the Zombie. And wow. Gerber really made this character interesting, and it's a very interesting story. It's a complete arc. It's a complete story. It's very interesting. It's very effective of the times, and very interesting artwork and fantastic stuff. So, guys out there, if you are on eBay, if you want to check out old Marvel comic books, get the first 9 issues of Tales of the Zombie. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, man, I want to give him a little look. It is a gorgeous cover right here. Look at that.
Boris Vallejo. Amazing. Amazing. But that issue is also interesting because you have a very interesting origin story, which is written, I believe, by Roy Thomas, and you have artwork by John Romita. And very interesting. And in the second part, you have breakdowns by Romita with the actual arts by Sid Shores, which is also quite interesting. And then it takes a completely new direction when Gerber comes onto the book.
Yeah.
Do you think Stan Lee had a big input bringing back horror too? Once the code stopped up, I see this. I find this funny. Look at that in the corner, by Sinister Stan Lee. And then when you look up the magazines, this is the first one that pops up from the breakdown.
No, you need to understand the magazines only came about. What you had the following scenario in '68. Stan sold his company to Perfect Film, and they gave him a contract for 4 years to stay on as a publisher.
Okay.
And then in '71 they started Savage Tales. Roy Thomas, and that was the first black and white magazine. Roy Thomas and Stan Lee started that. And when after Goodman looked at the first issue, he said, cancel that. We don't want that. And that was the end of it. But then in '72, Goodman was out. And what the other thing was that Perfect Film had also a distribution company, Curtis. That's why you always see this Curtis logo. Curtis Circulation. They bought Curtis Circulation from Curtis Publishing, long story. Doesn't matter. They had their own distribution company now, and they had nothing that would stop them anymore. And the new guy who came in as Sheldon Feinberg, who was the new CEO of Perfect Film, which was then Cadence Industries, said, well, basically, here's the deal. Stan is the publisher. He's going out and promoting that shit, and Roy Thomas is running the show. And Stan was really out of the loop at that time. In '72, he was out of the loop. He came into the office and said, "Look, what is this? Can Iron Man has a nose? Okay, give Iron Man a nose." That was basically Stan's job. He was not doing anything creatively anymore at that point.
Did Iron Man need a nose, though?
That's a good question.
Did he?
He got it.
See, but Dave's there, lost in thought.
No, see, all I was thinking of when he said, "Did Iron Man need a nose?" My immediate thought was that I loved the very, very short run of Iron Man with that sort of V-shaped headpiece, like on the And I immediately thought of that, and I loved that. I mean, I know it wasn't functional at all. It was kind of,
That was your favorite Iron Man?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's a toss-up between that and the original. Like that big clunky suit. Because I think I like that because it felt real. Like when you see the modern day one, the one they've used in the movies, it's fun. It's fun, but it's like a video game fun. It's like we know that, Iron Man in that suit, like anytime Thanos hit him or anything hit him, basically, he would become jelly inside that suit. At least inside that big, thick armor, it felt like, you could imagine someone making that. You could imagine having someone like, fueling it. Like, it's still unrealistic, but it was more realistic than the skin tight micro tech, nanotech armor, sort of, thinks for itself armor that came along later. But that's because I'm an old fogey, see. I like those. I like those old comics, I do.
Oh, man. Comics, those floppies or magazines.
Never floppy. Periodicals, mate.
Periodicals. Sorry.
Brian Hibbs, if you're watching this, you're right. It's periodicals, mate.
Periodicals. Apologies for the disrespect on these books right now. No, but definitely.
Call yourself a retailer. Bloody hell.
See, Marvel was definitely my biggest influence when it came to horror. But then looking at DC, like you said, they had, not many anthologies that I purchased, but they basically had a line that to me was, kind of horror influence in Vertigo, for example. You know what I mean? That was great stuff there. The Doom Patrol, Constantine, a little much more mature Swamp Thing, the Saga. I mean, there was cool stuff in there. Sandman. So, how do you feel about that, step up, if you will, in horror as from doing anthologies and us getting into those really straight story runs and in depth with characters that started.
I think that was very much built on the back of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, because when Alan Moore came onto Swamp Thing and he did the American Gothic story arc, I mean, he was moving Swamp Thing into very, very different directions, and he was getting away. He was getting into the mystical, the magical, and he also very dive into the horror, because Todd Libbin and Bizet on art, that was creepy. That was creepy stuff. And I think they built it out. I think the second book I think once they moved it to Vertigo, I think the first book I really remember, other than Swamp Thing, was the Hellblazer book.
Okay.
I think for me, the thing I thought for me and what I felt on Alan's run of Swamp Thing is if I've really felt as though Alan moved beyond the simple label of horror. It was, sometimes some issues reminded me of like some underground comics from the early 1970s or late 60s, but he was kind of pulling on that. It was almost as though he wanted to move beyond just the simple classification of horror. It was he was going like, I'm taking this on a mission and on a journey, and this is going to go wherever it takes me. And there's often this thing about like, no, Swamp Thing is a horror book, and it's like, and I think there was so much more to it and I don't want to say Alan because It wasn't. Yeah, it was Bissett. It was Tottleburn. It was Veitch. You know, they all brought so much to that table, and even Len Wein, you know, who was basically the original creator and editor on it before Karen Boger took over.
And I mean, if you go back and that is 85, 86, and if you go back in time and look at the best books DC was putting out in that year, I mean, it's one thing. There is no other book that is on that level.
But you see, the thing is, here's what happens when you take you've got an up and coming author, and you give them let's give them one of the lesser known titles at the time. You know, Swamp Thing was doing kind of probably okay, but well below any of the superhero titles, and it'd be like, well, why don't we give him Swamp Thing? Exactly. And literally, like overnight, like with Anatomy Lesson, he just, you know, everybody wanted to know what that book was.
And I think that is where DC also made a mistake, because maybe they tried, maybe they asked, I don't know. But if you go back, I really like because shortly around that time there was Crisis on Infinite Earths. You had the major reboot happening, and then you had the new Superman book, and John Byrne. And he was great as a writer on the Fantastic Four. He was not a great writer on Superman. And if you imagine,
why would you say that? What do you think, man? Do you think he's more of a team dynamic writer as opposed to an individualist?
I think he had a better template to work from, because with his Fantastic Four run, he's very much doing the Lee and Kirby greatest hits, but he's putting on a modern, very 80s spin on them. Which is very, very nice. You have a very nice curve there. And if you go back and go at his more original first stories, they are the weakest. Once he gets into the Kirby, the Inhuman stuff, the Galactus stuff, then he's really finding his stride. And with Superman, he's doing very much the 80s stuff, but there is no focus. The book is very unfocused. The Superman book is very unfocused. And I mean, if you go to the first issue, the Metallo issue, I mean, it's Clark Kent working out with dumbbells. He's the dumb jock of the 80s now. He's very muscular. He's the anti-Clark Kent of the old times, and you see Lois in aerobic gear, and it's too much tied to that time, and there's nothing classic about that, and it's very much John Byrne's Superman, but it's not Superman. And if you take a guy like Alan Moore, who can really reinvent whole characters, that would have been an interesting take.
Yeah, I think we didn't need Superman sort of completely reimagined, and I think that, you know, Superman's strength was it was still he took away the thing that actually made. Yeah, well, it also took away the reason for Clark Kent. If you've got Clark Kent as being a footballer at college, playing football at college, he was already an accomplished author. You know, it's you've got this level. It's like, you know, no, build to that, build to him being an author, maybe. But remember, he wanted to keep his head down all his life. He wouldn't have been a footballer. He wouldn't have been a pro footballer. I mean, I'm someone who I still believe that, you know, the biggest problem I probably had with, I mean, I've always enjoyed John Byrne's work. I would have loved it if he'd stayed at Marvel and continued on, or done X-Men again, or something like that, or the Avengers, or something, created something new again. But with Superman, I liked Kurt Swan's version of Superman because he looked like a normal man. John Byrne drew this very muscular, wide guy. And
I agree there. Kurt Swan was, for me, boss on Superman, yo. Boss.
Yeah, I mean, and it, you know, I'm just really not meant to knock John Byrne at all, but I just, to me, Superman, because he's an alien and he gets his power from the yellow sun, there's no need for him. Like, he shouldn't be bigger than Batman. Batman should be bigger than Superman. because he has to work out. He has to physically get strong, has to work out to get bigger. Whereas, you know, again, it goes back to Alan Moore and Gary Leach's Marvel Man. Marvel Man was a character who his powers was inherent in his body. It wasn't any the science. It wasn't anything to do with he had big muscles. He needed bigger muscles. He had to work out every day. No, they're there. So he had a ballet dancer's body. And for me, I think Superman, if you'd carried on giving him a Christopher Reeve figure, would actually work, because you don't expect him to be as strong as he is.
You don't even got to give. You could also be fat, because it's not relative to anything.
It's not relative, exactly. Yeah, he doesn't. He could. Yeah.
I mean,
he could be 4 foot. He could be 4'6". He could be like the old. Like he could be like Puck from.
Exactly. I mean, Kurt Swan's Superman was very much the Carnival strongman. Siegel and Schuster had envisioned. I mean, he was very much the American strongman. He was not this super god. Yeah, and which is also very interesting, and that made him much more human. And these stories were much more human. And I thought the Byrne one was a little bit superficial.
Yeah, no, I mean, I loved it.
Didn't last that long.
No, I always loved it in the movies when, like Christopher Reeve, there's that classic scene where he wants to tell Lois Lane who he is, and he's in the apartment as Clark Kent. She goes into the bathroom and he takes his glasses off, and he's like sort of hunched over, and he sort of, Lois, and she comes out and he bottles out and he goes, puts his, oh, well, I just we're going to be late. And it was just like, I loved that scene. And it showed you physically on film how he transforms himself from Clark Kent to Superman. And that was wonderful.
But there's also something very interesting. Richard Donner talked about this. I never noticed this. But it's when the moment he flies out of Lois's apartment, and then he flies around, and then he's Clark Kent in front of a door. It's one continuous shot. Yeah. And that tells you all you need to know about Superman. He's Superman, but then he needs to be Clark Kent.
Yeah, and he needs to be Clark Kent because Superman is an alien. He's more powerful than anybody. He doesn't fit in.
He's an illegal alien at that, right?
Well, let's not go into that.
He didn't get paperwork to land here. No, I'm starting playing.
Yeah, as a baby, he got put in a cage.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
No, I mean, it was. He needs to be Clark Kent for just to be social. It's just to have a life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so he always gets the front page. So you notice how he always manages to get one up on people, but he does it in a way where he still plays the buffoon. He still plays the, oh, really? I don't know what to do.
He's a lucky buffoon, man. Let me tell you.
But he likes to elevate people. He likes to elevate people like Jimmy Olsen.
Oh, check this out. We have a question from Wrestling Soup. It says we're talking about heroes and stuff. He has a question. He goes, do you guys believe that the golden silver age superheroes could be recreated today successfully? Or does the comic casuals dictate stories to be adjusted to fit modern times only? Feel free to take it.
Well, I mean, personally, I think that it's, as far as will it fit in modern times, I think that's purely up to, like, it could, but it's just the case of whether publishers are willing to. Marvel and DC have gone a darker route with their comics, and I think it's why no one's actually been able to do a sort of a semi-decent Superman comic, really, is that, everyone's trying to tell dark stories, and there's so massive interference, and it's like, oh no, we can't stray from Zack Snyder's version, or we can't divert from such and such's version. But yeah, I think there's no reason why you can't go back to the Silver Age version of most of the Marvel and DC characters and just sort of like, hey, start telling stories again from that perspective.
Yeah, but in a way, this isn't it what Alan Moore did with his 1963 series, where he created the Fantastic Four in a sort of pastiche style.
But it was done as pastiche, and it was done as done for fun. But
yeah, but it would be like this, because if you look at the Golden Age heroes, they were created in a certain time period with a certain ideal in mind. If you look at the 50s heroes, they were created with a certain mindset, and then you have the 60s heroes, the baby boomer heroes, and they're very different because the generation of readers is very different. So comics usually reflect, or superheroes usually also reflect the tastes and the societal trends. And 70s is the stoners, the space opera, stuff like that, the social injustice themes and so on. Everything changes.
But if you look back at the 60s and 70s and looked at the type of stories that were being told, you can tell those type of stories. You don't have to emulate the time period so much, you know, as the way as Alan Moore did with 1963 with Steve Bissett. And Rick Veitch. It was, no, you can actually go back and tell a type of story that is where those characters are relevant, but obviously you have to take into you have to take in that we do live in different times. Like there's different technologies around which will affect the way, if you're Clark Kent and you're reporting, like you can just phone in or text in or use your iPhone as your, like, hey, let's go live on the Daily Planet website or YouTube.
I think what you can do, and it would be my pitch if you ask me. So here's do it. Give us all your pitch. I would do the Fantastic Four, because you can do the Fantastic Four as an explorer book, and you can do it today. You can take them to hidden cities we haven't uncovered on this earth yet. You can do the middle run where Lee and Kirby went to all these where they found him, for example, or where they found the Inhumans and these kinds of hidden cities. They went to Wakanda. Wakanda was nobody knew what Wakanda was, and all these hidden cities. And you can tell allegorical stories in these hidden places, and that's how I would do it.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, if you look at what modern technology is doing with satellites and sonar, you're like they're finding now more ruins in the Aztec in the jungles in South America. So they're realizing that no, the pyramids and the cities that they created were actually larger and more vast than they ever thought before. There's other buildings, villages in places in countries that they didn't even know anybody had been there, because again, they're using imaging technology from space. So if that's Reed Richards' company doing that, he can find. So again, in a way, like for a lot of writers, Earth's become like, oh well, we've explored everything's been discovered on Earth, and it's like, well, no, there's still a ton left. There's how many civilizations have been and gone. That it's we keep talking about us being in a fourth or fifth extinction cycle. So there's no reason why lots of civilizations, like whether it's the secrets of Atlantis and what
exactly. I mean, there's so many unsolved mysteries, Tunguska and other stories that are unsolved. Let Reed Richards solve those. And
I want to tackle the question here, though, because whether or not I believe a golden or silver age could be recreated today successfully, I think it'll be very difficult, because again, like you said, it has to reflect the diversity we're in now. So if you look at it from that aspect of having that type of reflection, how many people are willing to pick a book when you pick somebody else, more reflective of what's going on today? You know what I'm saying?
No, so I think
it all depends. If the stories are told tastefully, yes. But again, but the innocence won't be there that made those books so cool.
But the books were also they're reflective of their times, and they were reflective of inclusion and so. Look at Captain America and the Falcon. The Falcon became Captain America's partner. They went to Harlem. Captain America left
several issues in after the fact. But what I'm saying is, back then you had to see how they carry themselves, and just the themes and times, the crimes. They weren't, like today's type of stuff. So it's like things were more believable as to a crime fighter fitting, and at least how the story started then. You know what I mean? You can't tell that type of crime fighting story now. When I'm talking about those story-wise.
I took that question to literally mean, could we tell not stories set in the 60s or 70s or
that's
just
how I
that
also
type
understood
of
it.
Yeah, I'm
Exactly.
thinking all over though, and even deeper than that, because
yeah, but I tend to think of it this way. I tend to think of it, if you say, okay, if we started all these comic books back off at number 1 and we started going back to the done in one issues where, you know, maybe by the end of the first, like, again, Fantastic Four is a great example. Like we talked, I think it was the last call we had. I mentioned that to me, the one of the 5 of the best comic book annuals ever done was the first 5 issues of the Fantastic Four annuals.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you think about it, like if you can tell a good gun done in one story in say 20 to 24 pages, and then at the end of every year you get to have a 48 or even a 64-page story, that gives you the bigger story. That's you know, you can even say, hey, issue 12 is continued in annual Fantastic Four annual number 1,
which is very much the French Belgian comic book model. You have the album, the high gloss paper, 48 pages to, I don't know, 60 pages, one story once a year, very good story concludes, but you want to see what's going on in the next book, of course, because you like the characters.
Yeah, I think that I think you can take that approach again. I think that it would make it more inclusive. I think that, you know, you can still tell that sort of story where I think there was a kind of a sweet spot in some of the Chris Claremont, John Byrne X-Men issues where you could allow for that cycle of, like, you know, you're telling one story, but they'd be setting up the next story afterwards. And you'd have sometimes like 2-3 part stories. And then, but there's the sowing the seeds. You'd see this shady character appear, or a new character would be appearing, and that sets up the next little arc, and it would keep going on like that. And I think that works fine too.
I'd rather have that, the one and dones of that, versus the continued, constant, you know, reboots, recycling. Let's do volume 12 now of this book because let me keep rehashing. And then what annoys me even more, it's a volume 7. It's an issue 1. Oh, but here's the legacy numbering. But then again, it has no tie-in.
I saw the craziest thing the other day. I mean, they have now rebooted Batman so many times. So he's in his number 100 with the new series, and the Flash, which started his new cycle with the Rebirth as well. He's now at number 712 because they brought it back the old numbering. I mean, which doesn't add up anyway because they have to put on the Golden Age books and the Valley Run, which has nothing to do. So it's number 712. Makes no sense. At the same time, you have a Batman book which is at 100, number 100.
Wrestling Sue says here, I'll give you a fantastic example of multiple stories in one issue. Marvel Comics Presents.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That was great stuff. I mean, that brought Weapon X. That had the great Ghost Rider story there too, if I remember correctly.
Well, I think
very good. Very good. Shana the She-Devil story with Paul Grace.
Yeah. See, I'd like to see Marvel Comics Presents done as House of Secrets, where they're all standalone stories, so you can tell 3 standalone stories. And it can be like one story is just 4 pages, another one's 7 pages, another one's 12 pages.
Yeah.
It's whatever the story, but you keep short stories, and you don't need to keep it. You don't need, because I think I remember, you know, when it would hit that sort of like, well, we're going to do continued stories. We're going to have like, this is going to be X character is going to be in 6 issues. Somebody else is going to be in 4 issues. Somebody else might be in 12 issues, and it's these longer stories being told. And I think if in the anthology format really only works if you're telling single short stories. Like do a horror book like House of Secrets, but tell it with your main characters. So do a Batman story that's a horror story. Mm-hmm. Tell a Flash story that's a horror story, you know, but it's a one-off story. But if you need your characters, if you've got to put if you've got to put your branded characters in, do that. But because that's why I think Marvel Comics Presents kind of suffered from the continued stories in smaller page counts. So instead of having 22 pages of a continued story, you've got 10 pages of a continued story.
Yeah, it was a bit like a European magazine where you had like 5 or 6 stories that continued with 10 or 10 pages each in each issue.
Yeah, that's 2000 AD, ain't it?
but it'd be fine if at the end, like if those characters didn't appear in any other title, and at the end of it, you got like, they did that with Weapon X, like Barry Smith's doing Wolverine. They did that, which was fantastic, and it worked. That's a perfect example of what they should be doing with it.
Yeah.
But if you're using it as it's Marvel Comics Presents, so we're just going to have a couple of artists, we're going to try them out on, like it's the first jobs for us, so we're going to have them do a 2-part story here. We've managed to get somebody sort of fairly well known to do an 8-page story, so we've been looking for a home for it. We'll stick it in there. It needs to be consistent, and it needs to be something that you're not going to get. You're putting Wolverine in a Marvel Comics Presents, and Wolverine's already in 2 of his own books, plus 3 X-Men books. It kind of, it's fatigue.
Yeah. I think that's also on the strengths of Barry Windsor Smith as well.
Yeah. I mean, basically, Barry Smith sold that.
I gotta laugh. We're getting funny comments from just random people viewing, but I guess they may be fans of you, Chris. They're sending lovely messages, apparently. Okay, great. I made sure I was blocking those. It was one of those unmentionable ones, if you remember, guys. Okay.
Okay, wonderful.
I find it hysterical. All right, so I'm here. All right, people are here definitely checking out. So Superman Saving Cats, and Cherokee Meadows says that they love the anthology format, like Ice Cream Man. Are you guys familiar with that one? I believe that one's from Image Comics.
No.
It's one of it's a newer one. Speaking of Ghost Rider story types, were the Midnight Suns or Civil Wars too much?
Midnight Suns, I thought, were, because that was just me. It was, it was event comics for the sake of event comics, and I know a lot of people have some lovely, positive feelings about all of those, but I guess I loved Ghost Rider when he first, Mike Ploog.
Which Ghost Rider?
Mike Ploog.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike Ploog was like Mike Ploog, Werewolf by Night, please. Mike Ploog, Frankenstein's monster. And Ghost Rider just became a comic that I bought every issue of their first major run. But after
really?
a while,
nice. You still have them?
Yeah, no, a long time ago.
That's one character I always dug as a kid when I just first saw him. This dude on a motorcycle with a flaming skull. Man, how badass that was, bro. So I did have some of the issues of the OG Johnny Blaze, obviously, but then, I didn't have that access because of the monetary value of them even then. But then here comes Marvel, introduces the second volume with Daniel Ketch and Mark Teixeira on art. Holy shit, blew my mind.
Mark
that first 20, 25, that whole first arc, of what, 14, 15, 18, 20 issues, whatever. Yeah. Amazing stuff, man.
Yeah. No, I even liked I liked them, that recent iteration where, it was the new Ghost Rider drove a car.
That souped up Challenger, was it?
Yeah, that was fine. That was fine too. Again, it's showing
Robbie Rodriguez.
You're showing that Ghost Rider can adapt to, if you're going to have a character, that was a great way of, let Johnny Blaze have his story arc. Let him see his end the way he wants to, whether it's happiness, goes off with his girlfriend. You know, she's free in the end. She's got her soul back and whatever, you know, have him go off, and the spirit of vengeance leaves him, and then just find somebody else. And that's cool. I like that, because you can keep Ghost Rider fresh. Basically, you can go to any time period. How many they have a Native American version now, you know, from that time period, apparently. Yeah, no, that's great.
Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme,
you know, so I'm out of it. Never seen any of that. But no, it's just
people agree with you, bro, about the Hell Charger.
Yeah, but it's just, you know, it's like there's so much you can actually keep Ghost Rider fresh, and there's nothing wrong with at some point even doing something where you have a big event where, like, the old Justice League, Justice Society is like some major event where all the Ghost Riders are pulled together for some major, like they're going up against Eternity or something.
They've done Spider Island, Venom Island, so why not give us some Ghost Rider Island? I want to see a whole bunch of demons going on Earth with flaming heads.
Into the Ghost Rider-verse, you know.
Yeah, man, let's do it, yo. You know, this could, man. What demon? What's the plan? I really love it.
Yeah,
I really love it.
See, now here's all right. So she's given me a thought. We're talking about horror comics, so let's keep it on horror comics. Like there's a DC character that is one of my favorites, but it's one of those books where, outside of the initial run, I've never liked the use of the character, except occasionally in the Batman cartoons. Is the Demon, Jack Kirby's Demon?
Oh,
it's like,
man.
It's like, look, you've got this brightly colored character, and he's got almost a sort of a squat superhero physique. He's got a cape, but I just loved it. It just, to me, that just worked so well. It was
not for nothing. Etrigan was the first hip hop MC, you know, in DC too. He's a rapper, right? He's always rhyming.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much rhyme. It was kind of. It wasn't so much rhyming. Kirby had him speaking in sort of old English.
Yeah, but it rhymed. In a sense. So I'm saying he was a poet, man. You know, shit. I think he slayed Jay-Z in a rap battle.
But you know, it's like I love those stories. I still near and dear and very close to my heart. And again, I don't know if it's just me being a Kirby purist, but I've never really been able to get through any other appearance of the Demon by anybody else. I wasn't even a great fan of what Alan Moore did with him, to be honest. So
yeah, they kind of eliminated that old talk and rhyming, you know, and more recent.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Exactly. Not everybody could do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes because they're getting the wrong writers on it. And I have somebody asking also, since we are on the theme of horror, about Hellstrom. Has anybody watched the show and has any quick comparison to the comic book?
I've got it to watch, and it's kind of like it's there. It's like I remember when I first saw the trailer for it, I was really tempted to see, like, and I am. In fact, actually, I might watch one tonight, just to see, because I want to know if is it the Hellstrom from the comics? Is it sort of, you know, are they bringing sort of, is it brother and sister in this? Is Lilith going to be in it?
I think so. Yeah.
There's things going on for sure. I only saw the first episode, but you know, I need that first episode to grab me.
It didn't grab you?
It didn't grab me in that sense, like, you know, so like, okay, I don't have to rush through this, like where I have to click on the second and third. Like The Boys makes me like that. If I have, you know, 2 or 3 episodes, like, okay, I got to watch the next one like right now, or, you know what I mean? But this didn't give me that sense of, oh, I need to watch it now. Like, okay, I could watch it tomorrow or next day, whatever. That's just my feeling on it. Not that it's awful, but it didn't grab me. Again, I haven't watched it all to really judge it, but as far as I saw, it didn't have the energy that I would expect from my Hellstrom, you know, based on the comic book character, you know, talking about all these, you know, themes from hell shit.
But does he end up with a cape and a pitchfork?
I get somebody saying here because we haven't watched it, said it was a great series, but there's no season 2. So this is one and done's we've been talking about. One and done series.
Yeah, it got cancelled directly before it even started. It got cancelled.
Oh damn! Yeah. See, what faith does that give you as an actor doing the program? You know what I mean? Like, how would you do another comic book? Like, damn, I didn't even finish recording this.
But you see, I mean, think about it. It's like I would have, if in the trailer I'd seen like the star like burn through his shirt on his chest, and the cape appear, or have his spear,
or even be like one of those covers on some type of chariot. You know what I mean? Just, it's Hellstrom, dude. Come on, now.
Riding into hell, like
that's different.
Lean into it.
Yeah, just a hint of that. Just occasionally, like even if you just had the burning, like the mark on his chest burned through his clothes or something, I'd be like, "Oh, that's cool. That's cool."
Make it fun. Don't make it grim and
well, again, let's see. Cherokee Metal loved it.
It's like, why take an IP and why do a story and name it after that, but don't actually do it?
Exactly.
Like, what's the point? Like, you can still call it a Marvel show.
Got to try and watch it. That's what it is. A sucker said, "Oh, I remember that," because the first thing that came into mind wasn't the iconic first act, but if you remember when they tried to make him popular again back around the 90s, and they had that parchment cover of his comic book.
Wasn't that Warren Ellis?
Was it? I think it was. That was a beautiful cover, and that's what that brought me back with his logo on it on the cover, and it looked like parchment. It was really dope. I like that cover. That's what it brought me back to. But again, Cherokee Metal says, watch the series. We will not be disappointed.
Oh, okay.
All right, so let's see. All right, I'm going to trust you, Cherokee.
Yeah.
I'm going to trust you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we'll be cussing you out on the next episode.
Yeah, it sucks. And 2 weeks, Cherokee Metal tune in, because they were upset. You're going to know about it. For real. I'll watch it just for you. Yeah, for real. So, but again, I do hope it is good, and bring in those concepts. Is there any? You know what? That is a good question, since we're going from comics and TV, but it's all one world of fandom. Is there any particular? They went dope. So get ready. Is there any particular comic book, or vice versa movie that you would like to have seen, on either type of format? So let's say is there a particular comic book story or horror character you haven't seen on film that you would like to see, and vice versa? There's something maybe on film that you would like to see translated into comic book.
Well,
I'll give you a great example. Legendary Comics recently, and the review's coming out Tuesday in Comic Crusaders, right? Mm-hmm. Legendary Comics is releasing a new graphic novel of Bram Stoker's Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi. So they flip it, that story using the Bela Lugosi version, and my resident vampire expert, Kevin Given, loved it. He goes, I didn't think they could do something different with Dracula. Man, was I proven wrong.
Oh, so okay.
Check out the review on Tuesday. We get Legendary Comics, man. Bram Stoker's Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi.
See, it would be nice then. I wonder if they're going to try with comics what they were hinting at with the films that they dropped, was actually creating a shared universe for their versions of Dracula.
The Universal, man. It's
werewolf,
time.
Creature from the Black Lagoon. Yeah.
Those are characters that are, underrepresented now, for real. And not well done. I mean, everybody's stuck on the old tropes, but these are iconic characters. There's still so much you could do with them.
Well, I personally would like to see Marvel do as faithful as they possibly can be, episodic adaptation of Tomb of Dracula, and spin out Blade from that. But give us the Blade that's closer to that comic book rather than the
more
guys in leathers and sort of looking like he's in the Matrix. And
exactly, let's bring him back to the roots of that Van Helsing type of style.
Yeah, give him an afro rather than sort of like the
the fade, man, all looking cool. I mean, not wrong, man. Wesley Snipes is the man. He had.
Oh, Wesley Snipes was great.
Yeah, he pulled it off and joined. But yeah, let's put Wesley. I mean, Wesley's still young enough. I want to see him. You know, do your hair just like the back in the day, man, and give. You know what? Even with that old take of the '70s, do it just in that whole style. Because you know, I just recently saw a movie, and they based it in the '80s, and it looked exactly like the '80s, but it's a modern movie. It looked fantastic. So do that.
Blade would work fantastic in the '70s setting.
Yes,
think about New York, Times Square, all the drugs and the stuff. That would be
cool.
A chef like Blade running around. That would be cool. That would be boss.
Yeah, it would. And we have another question here from Russian Soup. Do you feel Marvel and DC are making acting roles more geared towards top-tier actors instead of relying on lesser-known actors like Dan Stevens' performance in Legion? Did you guys see Legion, by the way?
Yeah.
I saw the first season.
I think that they can't help it. I mean, I think the problem with film and TV is that if you want even a semi-well-known actor, they want to be seen, and the company, like if they're paying that money for them, they want to, you know, they're selling it on the backs of whether it's Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, or Mark Ruffalo. So we have to see them, and that means that they have to like lose their costume, you know, their helmets and masks fairly regularly.
I don't know if Mark Ruffalo could pull a box office. I'm just saying.
Oh no, I mean, like Mark Ruffalo is actually one of the best actors of the bunch as an actor.
Not as an actor, sure, but
fantastic.
But box office wise, they're thinking of Donnie be murdering everybody right now. Out of those that you mentioned.
Yeah, but look, I mean, you know, every Spider-Man film, other than the first couple of appearances, he always gets his mask torn off.
You said this now. You
want to talk about the Spider-Verse live action, don't you?
Yeah, bro. Well, they're talking about bringing all those versions of the Spider, the Toby, and you know everybody. You know the Miles. What's his name? Kid.
Miles Morales.
Yeah. Or everybody. Not but the other two actors that played Spidey. Oh, Garfield.
Oh yeah.
And the new kid. But imagine seeing all of them.
Tobey Maguire and
it was Garfield, Maguire. What the hell is it?
Tom Holland.
There you are. Yeah. And then Miles, you know, oh man, how fire would that be? I would love to see this. That has me excited.
I think that's a little bit too early to do this now, but it looks like this is what they're going. This looks like what they're going to do.
But dude, that's what they're doing in general anyway. I mean, every storyline is sped up in film. They're only touching upon current. I mean, with the plethora of storylines that date back so many years, you could touch and grab so many things from back then. But instead, you know, movies just want to focus. Oh, what was the most recent comic event? Let's do that as a movie.
Well, I think they're tying it.
Takes away from the history.
Look, they had a story they wanted to tell originally with Thanos, and to get to that point, you had to skip over so many stories in those characters' histories. So, like, you know, if you know that Iron Man's going to die at the end of, the Infinity War.
Spoiler alert! For those that haven't watched
Endgame.
Oh man, you ruined it for Chris. He didn't watch it. He didn't know Iron Man died.
Oh, yeah. I'm shocked.
But you know, it's I mean, think about like so many great Hulk stories got missed.
Tons.
Yeah.
Tons. That's what I'm saying. Are we gonna? We need some proper Hulk stories, please.
I think we need to actually see some of the films come like have their sequels be standalone stories.
Yes.
That aren't tied into just preparing the way for the next big villain. Yeah. I mean, you can still have a hint of that. You can still do the story at the end, and it'd be nice to have crossovers, like still have other Marvel characters pop up in the movie. But you know, I mean, like even if it was like a short run where you could cross over Ant-Man into the Hulk by doing into the microverse when Hulk went and found other world and he found his love, Jeremy Sheila.
And that's where we kind of get the version of that, like Professor style Hulk. He was smart, you know. He was a leader. He wasn't a savage. He was still strong, you know. But you had a much more human aspect in Hulk in that run when he was down there in that world. I love that. I mean, when it comes to the Hulk, it's one of my favorite Marvel characters. I've got the 6 essential books so far. I've got to finish that, and then the Rampaging, the 2 essentials tied in with that. But yeah, I love that. Hulk, I like that idea a lot, actually.
Yeah, even that
shit,
story,
man.
even
Oh my God.
that storyline where Doctor Strange sent him into almost Nightmare's realm, and
Oh, yeah.
like, he's walking, like, basically it's like you've got the Hulk. You know, he's almost mindless. He's incredibly violent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he's just, you know, almost like walking along these Ditko-esque pathways into different realms. But we find out that it was Nightmare screwing with him.
Yeah, when you talk Savage, man, I always remember the iconic was it issue 300 when you had all the Avengers trying to get at him. That's when he's wearing the trunks and he's just uber like diesel strong. Like, okay, like come on, I'm gonna kill y'all all. That's when he was so savage, a savage Hulk. I love that version of Hulk.
Yeah. No, there's such potential with all of the characters, and I think a lot of it has been skipped over, and it's probably the only thing I'm sort of hesitant about, like when they bring the Fantastic Four in. Like, it'd be nice to actually give the Fantastic Four a chance to really sort of establish
themselves on their own.
Yeah, there's such a great mythology to the Fantastic Four.
There is, but I think it's better served as a series. So that way we could get into all those many iconic stories and the human relationships between them. Because again, movies are going to rush the dynamics of the characters. When I mean, because again, you know, it's this relationship, and they're, you know, sometimes they got to butt heads, but then, you know, as a family, you know, they still unite and, you know, handle their business better done in the show.
But with the Fantastic Four, you need a movie budget.
True. True. I mean, we see failures like Swamp Thing that couldn't handle big budgets for TV.
Well, the Swamp Thing, I think that
was a great series. I love it.
I think the problem with that was they were reliant on tax credits from a certain wherever they were filming.
Yep.
They didn't come through, and so that suddenly made it a bit more expensive than they'd planned, and so they cancelled it before it actually had a chance.
Such a great show, man. What a proper rendition of a Swamp Thing, too, at that.
Yeah.
Broke my heart. I was very upset when that ended.
Yep.
All right, guys. So listen, we're 71 minutes in, not counting whatever happened before. So check this out, Cherokee Meadow. We promise we're going to watch it within 2 weeks. So we're either going to praise you and say, listen to everything Cherokee Meadow says.
Yeah, we'll either be looking for more recommendations from you, or we're going to be cursing you. Yeah.
We'll never trust. Listen, Chris does a lot of research on things, so believe you me, he'll find a spell or something over here, all right? And talking about research.
And if Chris can turn it into a series of reviews, if he likes it enough.
No.
He's building a monster one. And that's something I want to know before we go. Chris, when can we expect your next amazing column educating us further in this wonderful field of comics?
Hopefully a week from now.
A week from now. So I hope you get better, because I see you kind of dozing off. Medicine is kicking in to you.
Yep.
Man, because poor Chris has been down and out, man. But he's here showing up for the ICC.
Hey, so can you tease us at all? Can we get a tease on what this big column is?
No, we told you what it is.
Yeah, he teased it earlier.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay. Look, I know what that is. There's things in the air, apparently in the UK, that are affecting short-term memories. But
it's lack of sleep, man.
I'm sure. And Cherokee Meadow says deal. So
okay.
They're down. They're down to either get, Love the Blasted on ICC. But with that, definitely check us out in 2 weeks. We're going to definitely cover Hellstrom and a whole bunch of other topics. We're going to just, not run as many rabbit holes as we typically do, which is pretty good today. We did good.
No, you can't promise that.
But we can't, right? Because this is what we do, man. Them holes are deep and long sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of kept it.
We did.
Together.
There was movie questions from Wrestling Soup that deviated a little bit. They had to be answered. It's Wrestling Soup, man. That's over there, man.
It was mostly horror, wasn't it? It was mostly.
It was. So shout out to
Superman for a while, but
Absolutely. So shout out to everybody, to Aaron, Enrique, Mr. Bolo, Joker, Cherokee, Wrestling, and everybody else that was tuning in that I can't tell because Periscope doesn't give names. But thank you for tuning in 2 weeks. Check us out at ComicCrusaders.com, undercovercapes.com. Make sure to follow us at International Comic Crusaders on Facebook or ICC on CC on Twitter. And with that, I'm Al Mega, pa que tu sepa, wepa, and we're out. Aren't we, folks?
Bye, guys.
Later.
Bye-bye.